business, as it pertains to financial planning and potential gaps that they may have. We want to begin to help you frame an action plan, because coming out of this session, we hope there's some action steps that people can take and on board. And of course, to upgrade or update. For some of you, it'll just be an upgrade in that your plan is pretty okay, and this may just be a refresher for you. Nonetheless, I'm happy to have you on board. So we're gonna jump right in, right? So welcome to the future. As I said in the introduction, pretty often when we think about retirement planning, we're thinking that it's so far down the road, and that time creeps up on you in a way that you would be surprised. All right. So I want you to take a look at this image. I trust that we all seen the image. If you just give me a thumbs up, I will know if you're seeing the image. All right. Yeah, great. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So here's where I'd like a little feedback. All right. When you look at this image, what comes to mind? You see two persons there on the bench looking out to the ceiling. What comes to mind?
What was and what is, as well as what could be.
And who is this?
This is Michelle.
Oh, this is Michelle. Okay, great. Yes. Thank you, Michelle. Anybody else?
It seems as though this is Jarvis here.
Yes.
There are two different individuals of different ages. So it means that when they're looking out there, they are both seeing two different perspectives,
Yes, yes.
One is looking at a greater future than one.
Yes, yes, I like that one. All right. Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Anybody else? Ray, what when you look at the image, what comes to mind? Or maybe I can get a response from Sean or Ray or Kavita. I think I remember some of the names I saw. And there's no trick question here, right? Sean, you on? You there?
Hi, good day.
Yes, so when you see the image, what comes to mind?
I just jumped onto, so.
Yeah, that's all right. You're treating this like if it's a puzzle, it's a quiz. Quiz, it's just whatever comes to mind. When you look at the image.
Reminiscing.
Right.
Feeling like time running out.
Okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. Well, some of you've all touched on it, but essentially, this is really the same person. These are really, a young version and an old version of the same person meeting, And the question really for us this evening to ponder, some of us maybe there already, some have some time still, what will your young self say to your older self? And that's essentially the question there in terms of the things that you've done. There's this pretty interesting adage, I don't know how many of you have seen it, right? In our youth, we give up our health in search of wealth. And in our old age, we give up our wealth in search for that health that we have. In other words, we live in a kind of way that doesn't account for a future time. And this goes across, this pertains to finance, health, the full spectrum. And this is a interesting thing I'd like us to ponder as we manage ourselves, because you realize there's an inextricable link between our health, all right, and our wealth. How we manage our mental health, how we manage our physical health, how we manage all those things are important to us and that time of our lives. Anybody has seen the quote before? Or heard it before? Yes?
I've heard that, and I've heard that youth is wasted on the youth.
Youth is wasted on what?
On the youth, if youth only knew.
I like that one.
When I was a young person on the bench, if I knew what I knew now that I'm going on the right side, boys, to say that it's wasted. You know, youth is sometimes wasted because you
Yes,
don't
it can be.
all of these things. You're
Yes,
not
it
planning
can
ahead.
be.
So there's
Yes,
exact saying, but
yes,
something along into this that it, you know, sometimes you know you could waste.
yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes.
you could
And,
you know waste some time.
and it seems,
Wisdom.
you know, and I
Good.
will add there that it seems to be almost like a national malaise, because the reality is that when we start thinking about the future and the legacy and the things that we put in place and how far we plan, you know, pretty often it seems like our planning horizon doesn't go beyond 5 years. All right. And the next 5 years disconnected from the last 5 years. So it's really something that we have to work on. But ladies and gentlemen, if you did not know before, I'm saying to you now, the future is here, not tomorrow. All right. Take a look at some things that some futurists said, right? They're saying that by 2030, 80% of doctors' visits will have been replaced by automated exams. Now, interestingly, right? This was written before this AI thing, right? And you see what it's saying now, right? 80%. I mean, in fact, there are already apps that you could go on and you could plug in and you could, you know, 90% of restaurants will use 3D food printer. Do we even know what a 3D food printer is? Anybody? Does anybody know it's a 3D printer, a 3D food printer?
Yeah, I heard about
And
it.
printer,
Yes.
but not not food. I know
Well,
electronic.
Yes,
yes,
it prints food.
yes.
not-
Yeah, I
That's
heard
it.
about it.
This thing is actually happening. In fact, I have a client who's
Food,
doing
it
it
prints
now.
food.
So you can literally know right now it's limited to things like certain kinds of cakes, certain kinds of pastries. There are things, it literally has these nozzles that print out in whatever form, in whatever fashion you want it. That's those things are now, right? 10% of global transactions will be done through Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. All right. Highways will be designated as driverless vehicles only. Space tourism, right, will be a reality. 20% of new construction will be printed. That's the same 3D thing that we were talking about, printed buildings. You understand? Over 2 billion jobs will have disappeared. Look at some other things, right? And I'll put them all up, and as we look at them, what I want you to contemplate is the reality that when we start thinking about financial planning and retirement planning in particular, all right, this is what we have to take into consideration. And quite often, you know, some of my clients who have gone maybe 5-10 years find themselves in a situation where they're like, you know, that's Van Winkle's story where this person is out of touch. And not only that, you also have to cater for the financial implications of all these things. All right. Sometimes we for those of you that know about Star Trek, anybody ever looked at Star Trek? These things seem to be so far removed. But right now, some of those things you saw are being done. All right. And what has happened as a result of COVID? COVID has speed up, you know, it has sped up. All right. The rate at which a lot of these things are happening. So I guess what I'm saying to you is that this future is now. So what I'm trying to do is to create a sense of urgency, you know, where we become more intentional about planning for that time in our lives, and we don't put it off for some other time, because that other time is now. This point here, well, cable television no longer exists. I mean, it's a serious thing. I mean, I'm talking to some younger people and they tell me they don't watch television. They can't tell me when last they looked at TV. In fact, in their world, TV is dead. You understand? Cable, they're online, they're streaming, they're on Netflix and Apple, you understand? They're into their own worlds, and you would be surprised how many worlds exist, all right now, right? So this is just the reality, you know, of what we have to face with. And this reality is now. Let me show you some stats, right? One stat shows, and these are a global stat, right? That out of every 100 person reaching 65, 60% are either dead or dependent. And I'm sure we know people like that, all right? Some say they're dead and they're happy, you know, because they have no more worries. But the others are dependent on family, the friends, or even the state, or maybe even charity. And this person is referred to as the reliant retiree. I don't know if you know any of those, right? 35% are usually still working, right? And that's the working retiree. And another 5% are what we call financially independent. Maybe because they just have that kind of wealth because of inheritance or what have you, they've worked for it, or they've been able to accumulate wealth that they can draw down, all right? for the remaining of their retirement life. All right. So what then is retirement? When we think about the word retirement, you know, what is retirement? And I have this little clip. I hope it's coming through. You let me know if it's coming through clearly.
Mom, Dad, I get the brakes fixed. But I need to borrow it later. Plus, I need some cash. I have this movie on the scene. Yeah, I spent out my pension check too. Guys, I figured out how I can pay you back. Retirement fundraiser.
78% of young adults are unprepared for retirement.
You really should have spoken to him about proper retirement planning.
Anybody can recall this? This was actually
Yeah,
an
I
ad
remember.
on television at one time. Hello?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So the reality is that we have all kinds of thoughts and ideas about what retirement is and how to prepare for it. And in this session today, we want to look at what this means, right? One definition says retirement is defined as a partial, and you'll understand why we say partial, or complete withdrawal from career work accompanied by a change in the source and decrease of income. See that once more. It's a partial or complete withdrawal from your career work. And this is normally accompanied by a change in the source where income comes from, and alternatively a decrease in income over time. All right. So you'll find that there are different ways of looking at it. For some people, this is their view of retirement. Behind every retired man is a woman wishing he would go back to work. Anybody know of situations like that? What about this one? Retired under new management. See wife for details. Oh, look, it is I don't give o'clock. And that's for those people who want the time to just go and just enjoy whatever. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock is all the same for them, right? Then there are this one with the checklist. So at 9 to 10, I do nothing. I take a break. Then 11 to 12, I do nada. Then I take lunch. Then zip. Then zero. Then I take a break. Then zilch again. What is your idea when you think about retirement? You know, another version. I don't want to. I don't have to. You can't make me. I'm retired, right? I'm retired. Do it yourself. Don't ask me to do anything. All right. So when you think about retirement, what about yours, right? What does your retirement future mean? All right. Will it be the retirement on the left, which is a change of tires, a change of pace, or will it be retirement as we have seen it before? So one of the things that you'd realize with retirement is that there are different types, right? So there's what you call the traditional retirement, where you work until a certain time and then you retire. There's early retirement, temporary retirement, semi-retirement, and mini retirements, right? And what this points to is that there's no one way of doing it, all right? And as you see, you'd see in this diagram here, what you see is that people are making choices that are best for them. So when you start thinking about retirement, there's no one way. And this of course, is just some of the categories. It isn't limited to this at all. So on top, you see the traditional retirement. You train, you go to school, you work, and then you retire at about 60, 65. You're all seeing this, right? Right?
Yeah.
Then we have the early retirement. Maybe some persons in the army and some, benefit from this, and other persons make this as a choice, all right? And I actually have clients who have these kinds of goals, right? Where they push and they work and they save hard until 45, and then they retire to do what they want to do. Then you have the temporary retirement, as I shared before, all right? Where you educate yourself, you work, save, you retire, all right? Fully retire, and then you go back again. You see that? Then you have what you call the semi-retirement, right? Which basically means you continue to work, right? But so you may not necessarily leave your employ, or you may work for a lower salary or a lower paying job, but you keep yourself, employed. And of course, the last one, meaning the mini retirement, which is several times of just, working, coming off of work, and you'll be surprised that people are actually taking up some of these options. But as you look at these options, anybody here, Any of these things appeal to anybody? Anybody, when you think about retirement, this kind of, any of these categories capture what you have in mind? Jabari. I think there was a Jabari name here. Jabari with us?
Yeah.
Any of these appeal to you?
The first one, for sure.
The first one for sure. All right. I see Sharon Maxime.
Yes,
Yes, Sharon. How you going?
How are you, Roll?
Well, I know you already there, right? But let's if you look at the screen, right? Which one, you know, tickles your fancy? Sharon, you thinking? Or we lost you? Well, Sharon is thinking. Junior, I see a Junior in. Junior, what about you?
Sorry, my own just went in.
Okay, sure.
Should I continue?
Sure, yes. Which one you really kind of captures your?
I mean, I've passed the stage, but
I
I'm saying
know. Yes.
I would have still looked at early retirement.
Early retirement, yes.
But
yes.
I am seeing your early retirement is at 45.
Right. And you would have gone for what? 50, 55?
59.
59, Sharon. Okay, great. Richard, what about you?
I think for me, the mini retirements may
make sense.
Appeal,
yes,
because of the simple fact that it gives you the flow of income generation as well as personal off time, so you could do as you wish. I mean, I'm a person, I can't really be idle for too long. So I think that would appeal for me in that regard.
I got you. And I put it up here so that we can see that when it comes to retirement, there's no one thing. And you may have something that's different to what we have on the screen as well. But the important thing is that they each have implications for how you save, how you put away, and how you organize yourself for it, right? So understand that there are options, but it's how we organize ourselves, all right?
Roll.
So, yes, question.
I can just put my hands up when I'm not.
Sure, and forgive me because I can't always see because
Sharon, Sharon.
Yes, Sharon, yes.
Right, Roll, there's when we talk about retirement, based on what Richard said, I don't know if this is true, but I know some time ago, I was having a discussion with someone and they indicated to me that they do not stay in a company for more than 5 years.
Yes.
Could you explain why? And they told me why, but I want you to tell me.
Well, some industries, it's almost like the norm because of how those industries work. So you find it a lot in the energy sector, all right, in terms of the timelines. But also you find that there's this trend towards the employee taking control of their own career, their own growth, their own development. And this idea of staying in one place for 30 years or 40 years, right? Just, you know, isn't as appealing as it was before, right? Particularly when you have challenges with the cost of living outpacing, all right, the rate at which your salary would increase. So people try to make themselves always marketable and looking at the market, putting themselves in positions, you know. So that's some of the reasons. Some of it is by industry and some of it is because of this trend towards, you know, people really living their best life. All right.
Well, one of the things I was told is that they're able to get back their pension money that they would have put in.
To get back the pension money.
Yeah,
well,
what about
pension refund?
Well, that
pension refund.
Yeah.
Well, I am not too sure how that will work, right? Depending on the kind, you're talking about a registered pension or an unregistered pension. If it's registered, it means that they're going to take a heavy penalties from whatever company they're dealing with, as well as taxes. So they're going to take a double hit. So I'm not exactly too sure how that works, unless they are saving outside of the pension system. But I can't see how that benefits. I would really like to see the numbers on that. Yeah.
Something as Richard said is an investment. So if they get 150,000, I'm just saying, after 5 years, or 75,000 after 5 years. That's for them a lump sum that they can invest or keep, or I'm just saying that's what they indicate.
I mean, the issue, well, I mean, the main issue with retirement isn't so much the cash. The main issue with retirement is the income it can generate, right? And that is often predicated by market forces, or unless maybe you can invest in some thing that brings in rental income or something like that. So even if you get $1 million, the issue would be, I'll tell you, for example, I had a client, right? And at the point in time when she retired, she got this she retired a little early, got this lump sum, and figured she would live off the interest. As it would happen, it began as the interest wavered, she cut into her principal. By the time I came along, she probably only had $100,000 left, So in times of high interest rates, maybe, and I remember we were at that time, I remember times when at the unit trust you could get 20% and more. But with the rates you're paying now, I would really have to run the numbers on that. But again, as I said, people are choosing to do things differently, But somebody was going to say something. Was it Richard? Right. So while that person is
No, I saw.
Sorry?
Davis.
Okay, what were you going to say?
I've been in a few conferences lately, and the discussion is the whole concept of retirement has changed.
Yes.
Because of this new thinking, this new generation. They have a whole, they are converting the whole principle of retirement. That idea what Sharon brought up in respect of working for a period of time and using that money and investing it, and that is the kind of mode they are in. They are no longer into like us in the older time where we have to work for 60 or 65 years and wait on our lump sum. They are using retirement now as an investment. And there are companies that facilitate that. I mean, the new kind of companies that operate now, they facilitate that. So that's a discussion which I know you will have to intensify as you increase in this whole retirement interaction.
Yes, and you actually, it was on the screen. I actually showed an example of it. But how it's really accomplished is not only through pension funds, and that's the difference though, all right? And that's one of the things I want to say about retirement planning. It's not only about what you put in a pension plan, it's an entire investment strategy. So people generally who are able to do that, it has to encompass the entire pension, their entire investment strategy, and not only pension funds. And that's where I would have a little difference there with the question that Sharon raised. So definitely people are doing it, right? But not only based upon the retirement funds, they're using other funds and other means to be able to do that, and a mix. Some people are going very early. I had a client once, and his goal, and this is why it's so important to connect. You meet so many different strategies. He very early in his life, he put all his money, when I mean all his money, everything he had into property, building. He took years to build. He amassed some properties, and by about late 30s, he was in a position where it was giving him an income. You understand? So there are all kinds of strategies, but really, of course, has to be in tune with the individual and their own propensity to save, to take risks, which are the kind of things that we will discuss on a one-on-one. All right? So thank you for that. So certainly there, I wanted to also speak to this idea of myths. All right? And so when it comes to retirement planning, and this goes to the point I was making earlier, it's not just about a government pension, and you understand why in some slides later. It's not just about NIS, right? It's not just about company and individual pension plans, which is the point I was making. Some people believe, I have plenty of time, all right? Some people feel I'll be good as soon as whatever it is, fill in the blanks. They have this idea that this one thing will make it for them. I'll marry rich, I'll win the lottery, or, some people have their children as their retirement plan. And I know that's nobody here, right? Samantha, Leslie Ann, Sean, none of you here, right? You Your retirement plan is your children. And I know people who literally do this, right? They invest in their children with the expectation that the children will take care of them. That's the retirement plan. Some people also believe it's too late, it's too expensive, all right? And some people believe business alone, mutual funds, real estate, right, would be their ultimate retirement plan. Essentially, what I'm saying here is that you have to have a portfolio. You have to have a mix. There's no one thing, right, that helps to put you in that comfortable state, right? Here are some other stats which tells us why it's important, right? And in the video, they were saying actually about 70-something% of persons are not ready and not properly prepared, right? 54% do not have occupational pension. 69% rely on NIS and old age pension. You see any kind of numbers? And this speaks to the fact that we really need to do something about it, all right? And these are some other realities. Most individuals do not have a financial plan. And when we say a financial plan here, we'll be talking about something that's written, that's documented, that is researched, that is costed with contingencies, right? Those that have some sort of plan don't have a plan for retirement. Those that have a retirement don't ever update it. Which is the other thing I want to bring to the fore here today. A retirement plan or some whatever program you have is not something you put, you know, you invest in it, you put it here and you just, you know, set it and forget it. You understand? You have to be actively involved. One of the questions I like to ask persons is, what's the return that you're getting on wherever your investment, your retirement funds are invested? Anybody here know? Any show of hands? Do you have a sense? I'm looking for some thumbs up. Anybody knows what it is? I see no takers, right? Well, I'm thinking that would mean probably no, right? But the reality is that, you know, if nothing else you learn today, all right, or comes out of the session today, is that you have to be aware and you have to be on the button when it comes to, beyond just retirement, anywhere you have money invested, because things change over time. And you have to be prepared every year to be making those adjustments. Because every time it decreases, that interest rate fluctuates, it affects, you know, for some people what, you know, depending on the plan. I know in NP and some places you may have different types of plans, but it's something that you have to be aware of, all right? With greater life expectancy, people are living longer, which means a longer retirement. Have you really catered for a period that could be as long as your working life? Right? These are just some thoughts for you to think through, right? With illness, right? Does your retirement plan cater for critical illness? So you'd realize that when we say retirement plan, we're not just talking about investing in a pension plan somewhere. We're talking about all the things that go into providing for that time of life. All right? This is what we're trying to get to when we say retirement planning. All right? Why this is important? As I have seen in over the years, this is one of the things that could just disrupt your retirement plan. And, you know, I've had enough occasions where clients, you know, get this lump sum or whatever it is, illness comes because they haven't been taking care of themselves or something happens, and there goes the retirement plan. All right, there goes property. I've had clients who've had to sell their property because there was no provision for major illness. It's another thing for us to consider. This number 2 here is where a lot of the challenges, and I'm going to show you a little chart later on where you could see how inflation affects your situation. So just imagine you are getting 2% return, all right, wherever you have your funds invested. And anybody knows what the current inflation is? Anyone?
9 or 10%.
Sorry, 9 or 10? Did you say 9 or 10? Right, it is pretty high. It's been bordering around 7-8%. The CSO and the central bank are debating it, all right? But it's somewhere in the vicinity of 8%, all right? So if you're getting 2%, can anybody tell on your investment funds in some retirement fund, could you tell me what's really happening to your money? especially when the time comes for you to use it. All right. So what I'm trying to engender here is a sense of urgency and that kind of awareness that you find out, you get information about where you have your money invested and is it working for you. All right. So many people are destined to outlive their money. The money wouldn't last. All right. So these are some other things that I put up here. We wouldn't get into it, but just to give you a sense of the things that people don't consider. Right. They only take advice from friends and family. They don't go outside of that. Right. Some people are just too conservative. All right, on the investments. They take no risk at all. Some people don't have an estate plan. We'll talk a little bit about that. Spending too much early in retirement is a big issue that I've seen. All right. Be careful of the frauds and the scams. All right. Quite a number of people have gotten into a number of these schemes, and some people are not even aware right now, you know, that some of these schemes that are now classified as pyramid schemes, there are now fines and even imprisonment for one, being in the scheme, for two, advertising, promoting it, sharing it with somebody else. I don't know if you're all aware of it. So it's something you want to be aware of, apart from the fact that you have to be very careful with some of these things. Right? I always advise persons to check with the, you know, financial intelligence unit. Yes, Mr. Jarvis?
Yeah, you know, the conversation you're having there, maybe people of recent time and who really into financing will understand. The majority of people of our era, unless we follow up on it, we don't really think about what is being done with how, when we receive the pension. Many of us not aware that pension, that the management, the people that manage that fund is the people like you talking there. It's like we know you are talking to us now, and we know is to engage with those people who manage our fund. Now the thing about it is that, praise God, sometimes it is really being protected by government and all that, and a whole set of guidelines with the union and all that to protect us. But you know, sometimes I just think, what if these funds were really just controlled by just individuals without any kind of protection and policies and all these things? A lot of us would have just be thrown by the wayside because there would be no consequences when they would have just invest while.
Yes,
you understand?
Yes,
so we understand what you are saying, but that conversation really is that we know, listening to you now, we know how to be wondering, these trustees who are managing our pension, you know, they are the ones that what you thinking there is what they have to be doing all the time.
And
you know?
somebody has to hold them accountable. You understand?
Exactly.
And
that's the point.
And what I'm speaking to really is taking ownership, personal ownership. And that's really part of the big shift that has taken place now. Of course, you realize all over the world now, the burden of pension plans, all right? It's a burden because people are living longer, you understand? So you have a smaller workforce that has to kind of cater for this older population, and it's becoming a burden. Right?
Exactly.
And the point is, you can't leave it to a company, you can't leave it to the government.
That's right.
Each of us here, we have to start doing our own things. All right? Understanding the various sources, and you know, and it begins with asking a question. It begins with becoming aware. Wherever you have your funds right now, ask a question. Is what happens if the organization crashes? You understand? Is it possible? You know, it's very possible. You understand?
Of course, in this era we in, I mean, it's that kind of touch and go.
Yeah, so you have to be aware, and I guess that's what I'm saying. You have to be aware. So if some of you remember nothing else, be aware, ask questions, inquire, right, and begin to make those small changes. I have up on the screen here some inflation. Oh, sorry, it's right having a challenge navigating the screen, right? Everybody see my screen, right? Still, right? So look at this graph, right? This is using a 3%, right? Right? Afisha, okay, great. I see a thumbs up. Now, let's suppose you're getting an income of 36,000 a year, and you see up to 120,000 a year. Have different values, right? Depending on where your income is at, or maybe it's an actual payout that you're getting from a pension plan. At 3%, right? You see what's happening there? Can anybody explain to me what's happening there in 3 years? What's happening in 10 years? And this is really where the crux of retirement planning becomes a real issue if people do not begin to cater. And I use 3%. And earlier we said that inflation is a little higher. All right? Anybody? Afisha, I saw your thumbs up earlier. You can hazard a guess of what's going on here? What does the screen say?
Sorry, say again?
Yeah, what is the screen telling you? What is this table telling you?
Oh, you're looking at the movement of more or less of the investment at a 3% rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So 15 years, it's
yes,
right minimum between 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess more or less if your money losing value over time because it
right. So I want to, yeah, I didn't show the negative, but what is happening, what inflation is doing here? In other words, in 3 years, right? You see that 39,000, that's what you need to be earning to live like you had $36,000. In essence, your money has lost $3,338 in value in 3 years. You're seeing that? Now, you know when it shows up when you go to the grocery or when you try to do stuff, that's when it becomes apparent. You know, you'd hear somebody say, but wait, like, I just went last week and I can't buy the same, you understand? And this is at 3%. Look at what happens in 5 years. All right? You see what I'm saying there? That's another $5,000, all right? Another $8,000 you lose. So that $36,000 in 10 years is worth about 20-something thousand dollars. And this is at 3%. And this is part of the reason and why I'm so passionate about people becoming aware and starting to do something about it now, right? And that's why I said the future is now, right? Not tomorrow. Start making the moves now because money works with time. And whatever time you have, you want to invest it wisely, all right? I have too many clients coming to me at 50, at 60, they're fine. At 5 years, I get a call, they knock on my office. Mr. Rollock, somehow I can't seem to be making, I'm not too sure what's happening here. 10 years after. And the reality is that if you don't have the ability to earn extra income, it becomes even more of a challenge. So I hope the point is coming through here. So I guess what we're saying is that it's important to plan, right? Because it helps you to anticipate changes in the environment. Like I showed you when we started, you know, I started by showing you what the future looks like, the future you need to plan for. It helps you to lessen the impact of inflation. Sometimes to balance conflicting goals, because in retirement, sometimes the goals are conflicting, right? You may want to find yourself in, and this happens pretty often. You're retired now and you realize now you have to fix a roof or you have to do fencing or something significant, all right? So you have to take that lump sum, right? But then you may have a medical issue, or maybe for some of us, the time, depending on when we had children, you understand? The children have education needs that conflict with some of these needs. So we have to put off the roof. You all see what I'm saying? Anybody know anybody like that? You know, you have to put off these things. So this is why planning is important to help to balance off. In addition, I'll add, that it helps to maximize the gifts and talents that you have and ensure the best fit. Because with planning, you're able to look at the various options and then choose the best fit for you. So how to plan? Understand it's a continuous process. It's iterative. And by iterative, we mean you may start putting some goals in place, determining how much money you need for the goals. But then when you look at the kind of money that you need, you may have to now change the goal or adjust the goal or adjust the time frame. So it's something that is iterative. It keeps changing. It requires research, all right? So I want you to keep those things in mind as we go on. So these are some important things to note in your planning process. Determine your goals and objectives. Determine what your income needs would be in retirement, right? Calculate that gap. Once you see the gap between needs and the goals, right? Figure out what you need.
That's an important point there.
Yes, go ahead.
Very important point. Calculate the gap.
Yes.
Which will be responding to the graph you put up earlier.
Exactly, right? So, and that's why if you have the right tools and you begin to anticipate inflation, you can begin to realize that, wait now, by the time I am 70, this is what my need may be like, all right? My pension is likely to be X amount. So I have a gap. So what do I do? Do I go back to work? Do I start putting something in place? And that's the beauty with planning. You can anticipate the challenges now. You don't have to wait until the time comes and you don't have enough wiggle room to make the adjustments, all right? So seeing the gap, figuring out how much you need to save, building that retirement fund. And remember, when we say retirement fund here, we're not just talking about a pension plan, right? Understand the investment options and use the right saving tools, all right? Any questions here before I go on? Pretty straightforward. Great, all right. So for some of you, these are some of the goals I hear from time to time. They want whatever they get to keep pace with inflation. That's a goal that people set, all right? They want to replace the income of a deceased spouse or parent. They want to provide support for an elderly. All these are the kind of things that sometimes you have to consider, all right? Like I know for me, it's one of my considerations when I think, because I have a mom who is a little older. So when you don't have a lot of siblings around. So these are things you have to begin factoring in. Sometimes people ignore these realities, all right? I have a client who had a particular challenge because his uncles and aunts did not have a lot of children. And that's another discussion, this whole idea of children and the role that they play, all right? They didn't have children, all right? And what happened as a result is that when they all started to get old, he was the only one around. He had to run around trying to keep all these aunts and uncles together. All these are the kind of things that you need to consider, all right? So I realize that we're now at 7 o'clock, all right? I want to go back to Michelle. Michelle, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Yes, we committed to an hour. I know we started a little late, so I just want to do a time check. How are we going for time and how much more time do we have?
No problem. In my opinion, we're going great for time, and I think everyone is enjoying the information. It's very valuable, and I know we're all taking notes, so please continue.
Okay, great. So let me see how I can fast track, because I want to make sure we land safely. So these are some things to jumpstart your retirement planning considerations. Do you plan on moving or downsizing your primary residence? Big consideration. Big consideration. I have clients who build this large home. Maybe they had large family or what have you. It's now an empty nest. All right. Apart from property tax, apart from maintenance and all those things, some of them can't, if they live upstairs, it becomes difficult for them to go upstairs. So I have a lot of older clients now who are thinking about, getting a flat house. All right. So sometimes we have this big house in our mind, but how does that gel with your retirement plan? Because we assume. Sorry?
That is something I've observed a lot recently. That is a serious situation that we are witnessing.
Yes.
All over.
Yes,
that's what I just explained.
It's true. It's true. And some of you here may have a little bit more time than others. And I'm saying to you, if you have that time, begin to put these things, I'm sure Sharon can share a lot of stories about where she's at right now, right? What's the state of your home? Are you keeping it up to date?
Oh gosh, roll.
Are you keeping up to date with your repairs? If you're not up to date with your repairs, it could become a big retirement issue. All right, because you're talking about changing ceiling, putting up fencing, it could be a burden, right? How many years remaining on your mortgage, right? What about this whole property tax situation? Look at the trajectory. Property tax is something we're going to have to live with. So we have a big home on this big spread, you understand? What's the property tax liability? How do I fit that in, all right? Do I have health issues to consider, all right? Do I have the kind of insurances in place, right? And the challenge with insurance, as you would know, is that you don't buy insurance with money. You buy insurance with health. You all got me? Because if you have money and you don't have health, it becomes very difficult. Or what the insurance people say, you get rated. So what one person, the normal person might pay X percent, you might pay X percent twice, but 2 times, you know, because of the health situation, right? And that's why earlier we started that whole question about your health is your wealth and so forth, right? Some other considerations, right? What is your target retirement date, right? How many years we're talking about accumulating money, right? What your monthly living situation will be like. Take the time, sit down, you know, max it out, cater for the inflation. Do you plan on returning on, remember we spoke about the different types of retirees? Do you plan on earning income? Some people pursue business and other types of things to help generate that additional income, right? Do you plan to do that? What are your special interests? What are the costs involved? Some people have special interests that they want to continue or they want to begin at that time, right? Have you factored those things in, right? What kind of money have you put aside for your emergency fund? That's what that is saying there. It's blocked off a little bit, right? What's your emergency fund really? It basically said if for some reason, and I've seen it, where there's some issue with you, you know, it's oftentimes with pension plans, you have to prove that you're alive, right? So what happens when that gets stuck? I've seen people 3 months, and because of that situation, it takes 3 months for everything to go back on track. What happens? How many months does your emergency fund cater for? All these are some of the considerations, right? I put some of them, others up on the board there, right? What rate of return on investments can you expect? So if you know what the gap is, you know you need to save X amount. You can then determine what rate of interest you need to save X amount, and then you can begin looking for the best rate. You may not always get the best rate, but you want to get as close as possible to your target. And every 1%, all right, is important. Every 1% difference is important. One of the rules I like to share is the rule of 72, right? If you take 72 and you divide it by the rate of interest, it tells you how long your money will take to double. So let's say you have money earning 1% in the bank. 72 divided by 1, it'll take 72 years. So if you have $10,000 in the bank, it's going to take 72 years at 1% to get 20,000. But look at what happens, right, by just getting 1% more. If you can get 2% return on anywhere you invest in your money, right, that takes 36 years, it cuts in half. You see the value of 1% more? So that's a very important thing, you know, to look at, right? Will you spend more money on travel and hobbies and so forth? I think you all are kind of getting the point, right? So
while you're discussing that, you know, you need to inject that people need to be aware of scammers.
Yes, I had mentioned that earlier, right? And they come along, especially when people are anxious about their situation and they present things that are very plausible. And that's why you always need to check with the FIU, you always need to check it out, do your research. And even if you do decide to invest, because I mean, I may not recommend it, but I know people who have made invested and benefited. You always have to consider, if I lose all this money, what does this do to my plans? Right? If you can answer that question, right, then, you know, it helps in some way. All right? Because some people invest thinking, listen, this, you know, and people sweet talk you, there's no way this can fail. This is guaranteed, you know. Once you start hearing those kind of things, begin to question, because in some sense, rates of interest do have a measure of flexibility. I'll explain that in another session. So one of the guys you can research is a guy called Dave Ramsey, and he has here this budget wheel where he suggests certain percentages. So even now, or moving into retirement, you could begin to look at what kind of percentages you need to have the various areas of your budget within. Now, of course, these things will vary from person to person, and these are very general, depending on how old you are, how far it is, how many years to your goal. You may have to flex these a bit, but these are some generic. So you'd see 10 to 15% in savings, 5 to 10% in medical, and it's often a nice rule of thumb, right? So that's a name to remember, and you can research it. He has quite a lot of helpful tools to help you when it comes to budgeting for now and also for retirement, right? Right. I just want to move on a little bit, right? For those of us that are looking at the actual retirement plans, I just want to touch on that a little bit. You would see that you have insurance companies that provide plans. You have people like the UTC and you have banks, right? And one of the questions I often get to, well, what's the difference, right? So you'll find that often most insurance companies come with what you call a statutory guarantee, right? So even with companies like CLICO, right? Even on their failure, all right, because there's a statutory reserve fund, you still are able to access your pension funding. And that's a powerful thing, all right? As far as UTC and the banks goes, it only goes as far as deposit insurance, which I think is probably 150,000. Somebody was asking a question. Okay, all right. So the insurance companies provide registered annuity products, CCRAP, unregistered, and something called immediate annuity pension plans, right? The registered ones are the ones where you get a tax benefit, right? Oftentimes when you break those things, there's a tax liability, right? The unregistered annuity are also plans that people use. You don't get, there's no tax benefit, but there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of when you can access the money. So some plans offer quite attractive rates and you're able to capture that way. Michelle?
Yes, Mr. Rollocks, I just wanted to ensure that you knew we have until 7:30 this evening, because I know you were looking for a time check early on. So the session is started until 7:30 this evening. Thank you.
Okay, great. We have just about 15 minutes.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. So you have the registered annuities, you have the unregistered, and you have the immediate. The immediate annuity, how that basically works is like if you get a lump sum, it's often used to top up. Like if you already have a pension plan, so you get a lump sum. If you put that money in today, you get income from the next month. So it's called an immediate annuity. And that may be an option for some persons who need to top up their pension plans, right? And getting a lump sum, that's something that you can consider, right? One of the things I like to highlight, however, right, from an investment perspective, retirement plans are probably some of the best types of pension plans with some of the insurance companies are probably some of the best type of investment approaches that you can use. And the reason is because of what you call the guaranteed period. I don't know how many of you are aware that with registered annuities, the money is paid out in what you call guaranteed period. So let me explain, right? So let's say you acquire $1 million, right? And you have a 10-year guarantee period. You have different guarantee, 5 years, 10 years, and so forth. Typically, you have a 10-year guarantee period. That means every year you will get $100,000. You all with me so far? You've accumulated $1 million by the time you're ready to retire, and now they're paying it out, right? You get $100,000 every year for 10 years, right? That's guaranteed. You all with me? So the question is, I'm 60 and I've reached 70. What happens after that? Anybody knows? I know there may be some people here already getting a pension. Right? If you're not familiar, what basically happens is that you continue to get that. So if you live another 10 years, you're going to get another $1 million. If you live another 10 years, let's say you 30 years, you would have gotten $3 million on your $1 million. Does that sound crazy? And it's one of the things that people don't understand and realize with, you know, that type of pension saving. Now, what happens within the 10 years, and why it's called a guarantee period is, let's say you started getting your money, 100,000 every year, and you die in the second year of your 10 year. It means for the next 8 years, your beneficiary will get that 8 years remaining. And after that, that's it, right? If you die 5th year, God forbid, you get promoted, right? You get, your beneficiary will get 5 more years, right? If you die in the 8th year, they will get 2 more years and that's it. So your $1 million would have been paid out. If you continue to live on, right, you will continue to get that. So when you look at what you've put in, what you've gotten in return, it really is one of those very powerful instruments that people are ignoring from an investment perspective. Any questions here? I know this generally generates some questions.
I think with that, what you're discussing there sometimes, when you reach a certain age, like 70 years, you have to re-evaluate and recalculate it with the insurance in respect of that, if you're not taking all the money. If you're not,
yes. And this is why I was saying earlier that you always have to, you don't ever have an investment and just leave it there. You have to be aware, you have to be on the ball. You understand? You have to be asking questions, right? Too often I find people set it and forget it and run into trouble, right? So the difference sometimes to the statement there. So when you look at the other types of plans, the difference with these plans, however, is that at the end of it, what it really is a saving scheme, right? At the end of it, you still have to purchase an annuity, most likely with one of these insurance companies. Of course, because of the kind of mergers taking place in the financial sector, you have some banks and other facilities who are also offering insurance products. So, you know, but generally they have to now purchase a pension plan. What that means for you is that it's going to, yeah, sure. I
realized I didn't put in credit union there. Could I include TCU?
Yes. Thanks to the promotion. Yeah. So it's something to look at, right? When you're looking at your investment strategy, very important to look at this issue of pensions in the various companies and organizations, right? There's one more thing I just wanted to touch on before, and that's the issue of estate planning, right? And I like to raise this issue. There may be some of you that may be concerned about what happens after. And for me, it has been a rather unpleasant experience at times to see what happens when somebody has not thought about what happens after. Because even if you leave property, if it's not organized properly, it becomes a burden. I've seen too many times when without planning, right? Proper planning, it becomes a burden to those who come after. So when we start thinking about retirement planning, I also encourage persons to consider the estate, right, situations. Some people believe that, you know, this is for people with plenty money, you know. Some people believe only senior citizens need an estate plan. Some people believe because I'm married, everything will just go to my spouse. You understand? Some say I'm too young to worry about this, right? I say it's time to begin to look. We have too many times. I see so many situations where estates are left in abeyance, and those that come behind cannot access it, nor can they take advantage of it. Because think about leaving several acres for someone, and they themselves don't have the wherewithal. So it means that there's something a little bit more we have to think about when we are transferring money as we pass along. So I just thought I would mention that, you know, as I'm rounding up, as an important part of retirement planning, because the reality is that we have no guarantees and we never know when something may happen, but you want to know that things are in place. Right? So essentially a good estate plan will involve giving proper instructions for what happens with your values, right? Instructions for your care if you become disabled. And I've seen too many families quarrel about what to do with daddy, what to do with mommy, right? You want to know that you've obtained permissions and assign an executor and a trustee for your estate, and name a guardian and an inheritance manager for minor children. These are some things to consider. Also consider if you're going to leave property, you also have to leave the wherewithal for them to take advantage of it. All right, so I want to pause there. I trust I've given you some food for thought. I'll leave the floor open to questions, but just to encourage you that the time is now to begin planning. Consider the impact of inflation, all right, on the work that you have to do. Be aware of the investments that are available. Get to know your numbers, get familiar with your numbers, all right, and begin to put a retirement program, which is more than just a pension plan. It includes all the things that you could do, whether you're going to do rental income through property, whether you're going to invest in stocks and shares. All those things can become part of your plan, especially investing in your credit union. All right. And I want to end with that plug. Don't forget your credit union. As I share with people, the dividends that credit unions pay out are still beating the market in some respects. So, you know, you want to keep that in mind. So I want to leave the floor open, Michelle, for any questions. And if there are no questions, I'd certainly like to get a comment on what areas may have been impacted persons during the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Please show by raising your hand. You can use the hand feature and raise your hand via the Zoom app. Are there any questions at this time?
While you're thinking, I'll just like to, you know, ask a few questions myself. Nicole Pierre, are you there? I know a Nicole Pierre, and I wonder if it's you. I wonder if I could see Nicole's face. Nicole, can I see you for a second? Nicole, you know me? No?
No, I don't know you.
Okay, Nicole. Could you, what will be just one thing you feel that jumped out from our discussion today that you felt was relevant and applicable to you? Just one thing.
I would say the fact that you need to constantly look at your retirement plan.
Yes.
Revise it. That
Don't
was
put it on a
significant.
shelf.
That's right.
Yes. Thanks. And thanks for your participation. Christiana, one thing that jumped out at you today, this evening? Christiana, still with us? Not sure if we have Christiana. Michelle, what about Kavita? Kavita, you still with us? Okay, seems like we've lost. What about Afisha? Is Afisha here? Just one thing that jumped out that you found that was beneficial or applicable.
Sorry about Mr. Rollock. Just
that's all right.
To know your retirement plan.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big yes for me.
Yes, yes.
Even though I'm retired. Right?
Yes.
But that was a key thing for everybody as well to know.
Yes, and the inflation doesn't stop. It doesn't stop because
exactly.
we retire, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for your participation. Richard, just
You're
one
welcome.
thing that jumped out at you. Richard still with us. What about Leslie? Leslie, you there? Okay, great. Well, Michelle, I'll turn over to you. If there are any more questions, I'm here. Certainly was a pleasure sharing, you know, some of these thoughts with your members.
Mr. Rollock, thank you so very much for joining us and facilitating this webinar, which is on retirement planning. I know there are so many wonderful takeaways from this, and you're helping us prepare for the next phase in our life, securing the next phase of our life. So I thank you for that. And I would like to say thank you to each member for joining and being a part of this. And I certainly hope that you put all of this great information to good use. Thank you and have a great evening. I'm Michelle Borrell.
Good evening all. Bye.
Good afternoon,
Right.
Mr. Rollock, Michelle.
Before we close, I hope all members have signed up for our family day next week.
Mr. Jarvis just wanted to remind all TCU members of our family sports and family day next Saturday, which is Monopoly. So if you have not yet signed up, remember registration closed at 5 p.m. this afternoon. But I'm sure if you go to the link now, they will still possibly have time to fit you in. But that is something that you should do right now. Don't go to sleep unless you register. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Have a good afternoon.
All the best, you.
Sorry about that, Roll, but I couldn't unmute my mic.
That's all right.
Good night, everyone. Be safe. Thanks, all.
Hi,
So,
good
man,
night.
anytime.
Thanks
Pleasure.
all.
A pleasure.